Coming up towards 6:43 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, the President General of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, Ancel, Roget, is calling on the population to take a stand against corruption as the Prime Minister dismissed his threat of a strike at the state oil company Petrotrin over stalled salary negotiations. Mr. Roget made the call during an address to the nation on TV6 last evening. The joint trade union movement will march throughout the streets of Port of Spain tomorrow. It actually starts with an assembly at Woodford Square at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This entire exercise is under the theme, "It's time to take a stand against corruption." We're joined now by Mr. Roget, who's the leader of the joint trade union movement as well. Mr. Roget, very good morning to you. Good to have you on the program. Is this a serious march about issues, or is this an after-work line just going after the government, as most trade unions do in an election season?
Well, we would hardly want to reduce it to that. If there's anything that can be described as an after-work line, it is the government of Trinidad and Tobago, because we are really doubtful that any work is performed there in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me tell you, any Trinidadian, any honest, law-abiding citizen who today does not believe that there's rampant corruption throughout the country, state corruption, government corruption, that person needs to have his head or her head examined.
But the joint trade union movement leading this exercise tomorrow. 5 years ago, you were leading this exercise on behalf of the People's Partnership, which we've talked about before. So, what does this represent? Not you just simply joining the opposition bandwagon?
No, it must not. We must not put out erroneous information into the public domain. We are consistent in that regard. 5 years ago, and even prior to that, you remember the People's Democracy, even before the People's Partnership come into being. We were out there identifying what we considered to be wrong. We were out there dealing with all the poor management of the state enterprises as we saw it then. And so we committed to consistently go after what we need, which is good governance. And they had committed to doing better. Indeed, their mantra was call the heart, call the heart, call the heart, and they were against corruption and so on. And we did not just allow them to go into government. You know, remember, we put decent people with them to do a particular job and to watch over them, to be watchful over them. Well, they begin to turn those decent people indecent, and we had was to remove ourselves from them. But the corruption continued to be unabated. And so it's corruption at our state enterprises, poor performance at Petrotrin. I mean, one of the reasons why Petrotrin is underperforming is because it is staffed with people at the very top who do not know what they are doing.
But isn't it also true that Petrotrin is also overstaffed at all levels? That industry standards suggest that Petrotrin is basically overstaffed?
No, that's not true. That's not true. We have just completed a job organizational review exercise. That is to say, looking at all of the departments and so on and determining on the basis of the requirement for delivery of the service, what is needed. And in the critical operational and technical area, those areas are understaffed. What is overstaffed is your very top management area, your very top human resource management division and so on. They reorganize that every day to suit the whims and fancies, the instructions of the politicians. So, by letter or by instruction, employ this one, employ that one. You have a man who cannot be even a clerk, but he is a human resource manager, senior human resource manager in a major state enterprises.
And in getting back to the event that takes place tomorrow, and again, under the theme, it's time to take a stand against corruption. Do you think those who will turn out, those who will be in support of the exercise, will get that message, or is it merely an anti-government demonstration?
No. It's an anti-corruption.
You think
exercise.
People really see that, Mr. Roget?
Yes, it's
you know there's going to be a
anti-corruption.
sea of red, and the PNM will be there, and all their glory, they'll be coming out?
Well, you know, first, let me just say, we don't want to swing this or to underline this as any particular political party. If you have a member of the PNM who is against corruption, I applaud that. A member of the UNC against corruption, I applaud that also. And I think that we have a significant number of good and decent and law-abiding citizens in this country, notwithstanding what they say, who are prepared to call a spade, and they are upset at the direction in which this country has gone.
Is the trade union movement naive in that respect? Whether it was 5 years ago with the Faizabad Accord or now, you had a meeting with the People's National Movement leader, Dr. Keith Rowley, a couple of weeks ago.
And with the ILP leader.
With the ILP.
And with the MSG
Everyone
leader.
is courting Labour.
And with the MSG.
Everyone is courting
What do you think that meeting was about? That meeting was to request of them what is their position on the workers' agenda. The People's Partnership, they took on the responsibility, and you had Errol McLeod in that regard. He had the responsibility to implement, to the extent that it could have been done, the workers' agenda. The whole question of the Industrial Relations Act and so on, the repeal and the reforming of that to make it more worker-friendly and so on.
But you know they're going to promise you all sorts of, they're going to promise you things that you know they're not going to deliver.
But we had people sent there, unlike promises, sent there to do a job. And well, that job has been abandoned. We saw that. But the point we're making now is that we want to hear from all of them up front. What is your position? WIP on the workers' agenda is not just a document that deals with workers' issue. It's a broad issue that deals with governance across the board, treating with the same issue of corruption and so on. And so we heard from Dr. Rowley, we heard from David Abdullah, leader of the MSJ, and of course we heard from Jack Warner and so on. We didn't meet with People's Partnership because we knew.
So you don't want to meet with the People's Partnership? Well,
they had an opportunity to implement. They failed miserably. Not only that, they attacked the very workers who support. They got them into government.
Could I ask you, Mr. Roget, what's the point of listening to what the PNM have to offer, or the ILP have to offer? Aren't you morally obliged to go with the MSJ because they are supposed to be representative of the working class?
Yeah, yes, but at the same time, all of these political parties are major national political parties, and we want to know.
Are you looking for sweeteners, things that might be very much in favor of the
sweeteners. I want to come back and talk about the March tomorrow. We are looking for sweeteners. If
sure.
we were looking for sweeteners, I would not have been here talking out against this government. This government, you know, we have always had corruption in government, but this is a corrupt government. I think we need to make that point. The other point that we wish to make is that...
So the PNM of the previous era
we have always had corruption in government, but what we have here is a corrupt government where the ministers, all of them can be fingered in some perception of corruption one way or the other. And all of that cannot be wrong. Yeah? Now, the Prime Minister, we want to make the point, and we want after tomorrow, to unmask the Prime Minister. She has been shielded so far as Madam Clean and so on, and that everybody else is accused except her. She must be aware. Not only aware, she is ultimately responsible for what is happening within her cabinet. And we want the population to know all of this foolishness about it's the cabal. She is the queen of cabal, and we want to expose that in a real way tomorrow. The world must know, and so they must not be able to get away by telling the world, oh, things are okay in Trinidad, and so things are not okay in Trinidad. When you have all of these revelations, all of these scandals and so on, life's what? It is a fact. Yes, life's what? It is a fact. People are being arrested now. Yeah, and so we are saying that when they go out of office, and they will go out of office, they must not just go bow out and go spend their millions. They must make a jail, all of them, go through due process and so on, and they must, at the end of it, they must pay for their transgressions.
We're going to come back very quickly, of course, to talk about the substance of the march itself, some of the discussion, but very quickly, just on the issue of Petrotrin and those negotiations. What is the status with that? Are we facing the possibility of some sort of industrial action?
Well, that is an option. That is an option that the workers can exercise to improve the position at the collective bargaining table. But let me just say that with all of these millions of dollars that they are claiming to be lost, did you hear recently about these managers being paid millions of dollars to which they are not entitled? That is sweetener.
Yes.
Yes, that is sweetener. Did the energy minister address that? No, he would not address that. Did the energy minister address the fact that the incompetence at the level of Petrotrin would see a cat cracker off for 2 years plus? That is your cash cow of your refinery, but that is off for, and why? It is because of the level of incompetence at the level of the management of that Petrotrin operation. People who are in jobs that they cannot perform.
But you know, of course, Mr. Roget, it's such an essential element as Petrotrin. There will be concern in the wider community and the business community as well as to the possibility of any sort of industrial action.
You see, a lot of us take for granted the input, the valued input of the worker. You take, for instance, the tea and tech worker. You put your hand on the switch, the light comes on. You go to the gas station, you squeeze the pump, fuel goes into your tank. Nobody considered that it's a chain of events that takes place from the wellhead, from the beneath the sea, to bring that hydrocarbon, process it, and put it in your tank. And workers risk their lives there and on the tea and tech system to give you power and to give you fuel. And we are saying that those who power the nation, they ought to be treated with some level of respect, and 000 is very disrespectful. We are also saying that the company, in a most arrogant way, not unlike that at the level of the government, dismissed the collective bargaining process. We could find a formula to treat with the current situation and also look at when things are improved, that the workers are satisfied that their lot will be taken care of.
Are you hopeful of an amicable resolution?
Well, we're always hopeful, but we are in an environment now, we are drowning in arrogance, and we are dealing with very, very arrogant people who don't know and do not know that they don't know. All they're about is stealing.
Very strong statements indeed.
And it is true.
And before we conclude, Mr. Roget, just give us a
sense.
You're
concluding?
Well, time going by so quickly. I wonder if we could stay
on the amount of corruption we have in this country, you can't encapsulate that in 5 minutes? Of course not.
Yeah, in fact, we will. We'll take a few extra minutes after this, but we're going to ask you to stay on after the news for a few more minutes, because we do have some extra time.
Yeah, sure.
You're talking about some revelations in specific reference to the Prime Minister. Is this now time where the campaign is about attacking and going after the Prime Minister?
Well, wasn't it in 2010 when the attack and went after Mr. Manning?
And when you were part of that?
I asked you that question.
Absolutely, yes.
I am glad that you remind me that I was part of that.
Yes.
Yes, and if you go back, you would have identified us as being part of the attack on Basdeo Pandey and Chambers and so on, now my predecessors. And as we talk about that, there's a lot to talk about predecessors, but today is not the day for that.
We'll continue our discussion with Ancel Roget, President General of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, head of the Joint Trade Union Movement. It's a march and a demonstration taking place tomorrow, beginning at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with an assembly at Woodford Square. Under the theme, it's time to take a stand against corruption. And as we've heard from Mr. Roget, they'll be taking off, as he says, the mask of the Prime Minister, as far as the suggestion that she is somehow immune to all of these issues of corruption in her government. Well, when we come back after the break and after the news, we'll continue our discussion with Mr. Roget. 6 minutes after 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago, as we continue our interview with the President General of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, Ancel Roget. We have just a few minutes left with Mr. Roget, as we talk primarily about the assembly at Woodford Square from 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, the march that is to follow, all under the theme, it's time to take a stand against corruption. Mr. Roget, we're in an environment now, as you talk about this government as being corrupt, that you're going to take the mask off the Prime Minister tomorrow. At the end of it all, what are you hoping to achieve by this march?
Well, I think it's a number of things, and the first and most important thing is that for the youth, our children, the future of this country, to see and to know that corruption is wrong, and that there are a significant number of persons that are prepared to stand up against it, and that corruption, government corruption, state corruption, official corruption, it denies them the quality of life and standard of living and so on. And therefore we need to pull back. It's not just the bandit that runs in the liquor store, the grocery, and rob and so on that is bad. It is the bandits with the pen in the boardrooms and so on, and who corruptly staff these entities with incompetent persons, the party hacks. And it is also those who over-invoice, all of those kinds of things. To get the population with a psyche that says we are prepared to stand up against this corruption. Another thing is that we are clamoring for the type of legislation that would deal effectively and decisively with those who are accused of corruption. You would notice all of these revelations of corruption, but the Prime Minister is the one we depend on to cause investigation to start into all of these allegations. And it is against her government. So do you expect her to do any investigation into all of these allegations of corruption? Absolutely not.
But where is the evidence to suggest, Mr. Roget, that even when these investigations take place, that people are actually called to account, that investigations take place, commissions of inquiry are held, costing the country, costing taxpayers millions of dollars, but they're only done for political expediency?
Well, that's the point. And there's where we want to go, with the type of systems and structure in place that would bring them to account, the type of independent inquiry and investigation away from the politics, but zoning in, zeroing in, focusing on the allegations and so on, and thorough investigation. It's not just to investigate conveniently according to your political advantage and so on. No, that is not what it is about. And also, we want to tell the world. We want to tell the world that these same people who fly left, right, and center and portray themselves as goddess and so on, that they are indeed running a corrupt government. Remember how they would have gone out and told the world of what's happened in the last administration?
Yes.
You know, it's not just corruption, it's a level of deceitfulness. Deceitfulness with some of the supporters and themselves. I mean, the Prime Minister made some facetious statement about I always wanted to see our government fall, some nonsense like that, from day one. Well, from day one, they betrayed the people. So what do you have? The Prime Minister didn't recall that even before day one, she came to us, and I say that without fear of contradiction, asking for support to get a job, which job is to run the country efficiently and honestly. That did not happen, and therefore she broke her contract with the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Essentially, Mr. Roget, doesn't that really encapsulate why so many of the population, maybe especially the young people, are so very disillusioned with the entire process, and that tomorrow's march, whether it's well-intended, whether it fulfills a political objective, whether it's about targeting the Prime Minister, whatever it is, will actually not achieve what you're hoping that it will achieve, because essentially people will only see it for their narrow political agendas.
I think not, because we have attracted to this gathering persons across the spectrum, across the political spectrum and so on, across the racial spectrum, persons who, we still have a lot of honest, law-abiding persons who want to see this country go right, you know, and that is the type of foundation we want to build on and to maintain, and therefore it's not just about targeting the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is responsible, and she ought to be held ultimately accountable. If you have stolen items in your house and the police come home, in your home, you will be taken down, everybody will be taken down.
Not if I have a good lawyer.
Well, there you go. It's the type of system that would allow you to get away.
I could get enough lawyers to block for me.
But you are responsible for that. You can't say that you don't know. And of course, if for over a sustained period of time, you would have been hearing about all of these things. I mean, from day one, the Prime Minister should have called her ministers to account. That did not happen. And so we are saying that she is patently aware. They could say what, they could get vexed as much as they want. We are totally focused, we are consistent, and we are hell-bent on ridding this country of this high level of perception of corruption. And
are you also hell-bent on essentially getting rid of this government?
Well, I don't know. That is hell-bent on getting good governance. And if that means getting rid of this government, well then, and set them aside to
come back another 5 years hence?
To get, who to come back where?
You never know. Some people we thought would never turn up in the politics have turned up again.
Yeah, well, we need to start to pay close attention to these recycles. Yes, recycling.
And with the assembly that takes place, which starts with an assembly at 2 o'clock at Woodford Square, are you able or willing, or would you care to identify who some of the speakers are going to be? Because you say there's going to be a broad spectrum of support.
Well, we have not to be named now, but we have we'll have about 6 or 7 speakers, and David Mohammed will be one of the speakers. I could identify him. This morning will be one of the speakers on the platform as we talk about the whole issue of governance and a better Trinidad and Tobago for all into the future, getting rid of all of the inequities and so on that is pervading the society today. And of course, we have some 4 or 5 other speakers on the platform. But it will be a broad platform.
And I'm sure that many will be stepping onto that platform with this ideal of a better Trinidad and Tobago. But ultimately, ultimately, Mr. Roget, at the end of the day, and it will be painted as such whether you like it or not, that this is another act in a highly charged political season. In the few seconds that we have left, how would you sum up what you see as the purpose, the intent of this particular objective, beyond just getting rid of this, what you describe as a very corrupt government?
Well, I think that we need to go back, and in this country we have too short memory, because we were there in 2010. This union, this movement, we were there in 2010. We were pointing out the things that were wrong. We were there before that, so that it must not be taken in isolation. It's a continuum, and not until and unless we get good governance for all of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we would not rest, whether this government or any other government. As a matter of fact, any government coming into office now would pay close attention to what is happening on the ground. There must be a strong and militant and independent movement on the ground, prepared to take action in defense of the country whenever you have a runaway government, as we do now.
Does that exist? Is that not a very, very small minority? Because so many people have agendas, so many people have interests in different directions. Do we really have people who are that independent?
I think so. And whether or not we have agenda, we do have an agenda, and we make bold to say that, for a better Trinidad and Tobago, one in which every citizen will really truly find an equal place. I mean, look at what is happening in the hospital. See people sleeping on the floor in the hospital. You cannot get a bed in the hospital. When you do get a bed, you have to purchase medicines outside, while some people could go to nursing homes, the best nursing homes and so on. They've already tucked away their millions of dollars. That is wrong. It is wrong. And we are saying that and we want to make the connection with the average citizens. Listen, your life could be better if we did not have this amount of corruption and so on. And therefore, join us in our crusade for a better Trinidad and Tobago. We have hope. We have hope that there are enough citizens to stand by us, to stand by country, to ensure that we have a better Trinidad and Tobago.
Ancel Roget, thanks very much for coming in on the program this morning. Coming up towards 7:15 in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a lot more to cover in this second hour of Morning Edition on this Thursday. We'll be right back.